Hello and welcome back to the channel again. The last video did cut off kind of suddenly, so I will come back into it. We basically got to this point where he said 47 million if the budgeting was higher, the marketing budgeting was higher. Okay. And I'm really going to get into this. We're really going to kind of dig into this. But I said that's really worst case scenario for Man of Steel. And then I went into this other part of things. If you go over to the Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Man of Steel started off a cinematic universe that was then immediately interfered with. The second movie was interfered with by the studio drastically. Drastic. I won't even share all the ways that it was done. We're trying to just look at some numbers. But this came out, and Suicide Squad also came out the same year, 2016. Then Wonder Woman came out, and then we had Justice League, and then Aquaman. Now, they should have released Zack Snyder's Justice League. They should have released the Ultimate Edition of Batman vs. Superman. They didn't do that, and this is what we got. And then they should have also allowed David Ayer to complete his version of Suicide Squad instead of changing it. Because the backlash that they were hearing about for this whole thing has been backlash caused by the studios interfering with um, what Zack Snyder was doing. Okay, you can believe it or not, you do the research, okay? You go look up Batman v Superman and the ratings that it was getting and what critics were saying about it, and the critics were talking about holes and missing pieces and stuff like that. When the Ultimate Edition came out, they went back and watched that, and they apologized to Zack Snyder. They said, "This is what should have been in the theater. This is really good." I watched a dozen at least movie critics that didn't like the movie as they watched it the first time or had real major problems with it, gave it a lower score than otherwise, went back and watched the Ultimate Edition, which came out immediately upon the release of the Blu-rays and DVDs and 4Ks, and it's since then been released another way. But I don't want to get into all this stuff right now. But they were all to to the to every single one of them were like, this is great. This was a great movie, and this was what should have been released. And WB needs to stop messing with the theatrical releases, stop messing with the director's visions and vision of the movie. It should be done the way that they decide that it's, to be done. And we're still waiting for David Ayer's, release the air cut. Release the air cut. And I'm for releasing the gun cut too for Superman 2025, which is apparently 25 more minutes or so of tomfoolery. I would watch the movie again to see what it was that he had in there that they refused to allow to stay. But anyway, the profit, because it depends upon how you do it. And I have a different calculation here that Man of Steel, made about $100 million. People could argue that it didn't. I'm not going to get into that right now. But Batman v Superman apparently made $216 million. Suicide Squad, $311 million, had a lower budget. Okay, um, and a lower marketing budget too, but a lower budget. And then Wonder Woman became the highest grossing, or profiting rather, not grossing. It's lower grossing than Batman vs Superman, but higher profit margin, supposedly comparatively. Anyway, $448 million. Then we had Justice League come out. That's right there, and lost first one to lose money for the studio because they totally, again, interference from the studio. That's what you get. Failures, mess ups. Okay, apparently the studio's messing with Wonder Woman, but it survived it. Anyway, Aquaman came out. I suppose they just said, "Go ahead. We don't know what's going to happen with that guy." $752 million profit. That is amazing. Okay, because they had a low budget and and used it well. Okay. And then it goes on from there, and we're not going to talk about all this stuff. We're gonna go back. But yes, and I might add in here that the other possibilities of this. But this is what I was really getting at. For the last several years, they've been telling us the budgets based on a post incentives. They say you get the tax credits back, and you get enough tax credits back, and maybe you don't spend as much as you're thinking at the beginning. So the projected budget that they give to get the most tax breaks, of course, that means it has to be readjusted, later on, and you only get so much tax incentive. But it's a sliding scale. So I went back and forth with Grok about it in several different ways, to try to understand. And he said there was three different places that the place that um, the budget was reduced by tax incentives. You had uh, the Ohio one that everybody has seen. And you can go look it up. But Ohio tax filing for Superman 2025 of 363,800 something thousand, or 700 and something thousand, that rounds up. Um, it went down to the dollar. Uh, and then, of course, people were coming out, James Gunn's coming out. It's nowhere near that. How do you think you know that? Well, we looked at a tax filing. That's what we did. And the discrepancy between that and was made up. $100 million was made up by the approximately 11, 10 to $11 million from Ohio, from was it work in Atlanta and then UK, and it was just a few different places, but it totaled up to about $100 million. And I could scroll through Grok and show you all that, but I'm not going to do all that. Ultimately, I just got it into the spreadsheet, and I said, well, okay, so they're claiming $225 million budget when they showed a tax filing for $363 million. We can account for $100 million coming off of that. That makes it $265 million. Deadline reported years ago that Man of Steel uh, cost $258 million, and said, and Grok said, well, it could have been something like that with some different additions and incentives or back pays and stuff like that. But the studio might say, um, you know, it's a little bit less, based on just kind of rounding the number down a little bit. But mostly was saying rounding the number down, because we came up with a couple of like 30 million more. It's like $8 to $9 million, um, maybe even 10. It's a $240 million budget we were coming up with for Superman 2025, and saying, okay, if it's 225 million rounded down from 350 million or 340 38 or whatever it was million, um, then they're fudging with the numbers a little bit. Plus, they're saying that's after getting the tax breaks and tax rebates after spending the money in their cities and stuff. So you may or may not be following me on this, but pre 2023 and 2022, Black Panther Wakanda Forever reported a budget that was before any incentives were figured in. After the incentives were figured in, it got a little bit closer to $220 million for the budget, which is what they would be reporting today. Captain America, supposed to be that. You know what I'm saying? Quantumania, apparently they're off big time with the numbers. But maybe they'll tell you why at some point in the future. I don't know. Maybe they've even tried to tell you why since then. I'm not sure. But people have been suspecting this for a little while, that they're inflating the budgets, or deflating the budgets, and their budgets are actually much more inflated. Inflated. Okay? And people are wondering, how in the world are you making money when you're spending this much money on movies? Over 300 million for the Mission Impossible movie. And how much in marketing was there? They're guesstimating on that maybe somewhere. And they're just losing money everywhere. if they're really doing this. Okay. Now, I just told you though, it's after around 2023 or after that they started saying, okay, the budget's this because we're taking our incentives and figuring that in. They didn't do that 2022 and before, generally speaking. Man of Steel, claiming a budget of 225 million, is a gross budget of 225 million. And as much as has been reported, it's up to 258 million. Is the gross budget before incentives. So I started figuring in incentives, and we calculated an incentive to just go, maybe it's $50 million off for all its doings in Ohio and wherever else it did. Okay, and so I only got down to 175 million. I'm being very conservative saying this because 363 million was the reported to the tax agency. Uh, Okay, and maybe the only thing Ohio cares about is that 36 million that they claimed for Ohio, right? But um, that's the first part of it. That's just the first part. Okay, so if we do that and we look at just 175 million, and we're still going to allow the higher marketing budget of 125 million to 300 million costs, that immediately flips the story. Now, Superman's staying the same right now. Okay, $42 million loss for Superman 2025. 40 almost 42 million, 41,781,240 million dollar profit for Man of Steel, just in box office. Now, if we go to a percentage-wise idea of marketing, $175 million budget, and this is, I've marked it on here, net budget, which is after incentives. Okay, and I put it into the spreadsheet just as it is. That's just the doubling up over here is just a verification of the numbers there. So anyway, back to this here. $175 million production budget. And this last line here is going to be the Superman underneath my pointer, right? All right, with the $150 million marketing budget, 112 million, 112,500,000 marketing budget if we're figuring it by calculations from the pre-incentive, and figuring it about 50%, which on average is closer to that. It's closer to 60. It's like 59.7% or something like that when you figure in all these movies. But when you take out the really weird outliers like Deathly Hallows 2 and Twilight and some other ones that were spending $200 million and, well, 150 million or whatever it was in marketing, which was doubling up their budget entirely, then it goes closer to about 50%, which is usually what people will say about the movies. You figure half of your budget toward a marketing budget. So there you go, 112.5. Now, if it's 225 million pre-incentives, and we're not even figuring in percentages, and then we put a marketing budget like that, then we come up with a almost 50, well, $54 million profit. If we get our incentivized budget to 175 million, and that's just, like I said, taking a conservative $50 million off of it. Remember again, 225 million from 363 million. That's $138 million difference between the pre-incentive budget that they reported to the tax people in Ohio and apparently reported in Atlanta and other places. They weren't reporting 225 because Atlanta would only give them a certain percentage of that, and it would not reduce their price enough from the 363 million down. Okay, does that make sense? So anyway, this is a very conservative number. It could be higher than this. It could be 50 million higher than this, and then make a difference. But if we take this incentivized budget, like we're trying to pretend for um, Superman 2025, if we did calculate into that half of that for the budget, and stuff like that, we would come up with a different number, right? We would actually come up with a number which would make this really close to breaking even. Now, I will say, for the side of people that are actually coming out and saying Superman 2025 was a flop, I have to disagree with them. It wasn't a flop, per se. Did it do what it was supposed to do and other things? That's a different question. Did it make money or lose money? Well, Forbes has come out and provided this as the number. This is apparently a correct number here. It has lost $42 million. Okay, based on this number, $42 to $43 million. And that's based on these basic calculations. But again, if we go into Man of Steel, this top line here, Man of Steel, and give it just a half of this production budget for a marketing budget, and this is the amount of marketing that it put out there. And I think this is about correct. This, but somewhere between there probably, maybe 100 million, sounds about right. But anyway, going with this lower number for now, the theatrical profits go to almost $80 million, $79 million and something. And of course, if this was adjusted anymore or changed anymore, then we'd have a different number. We're not going to keep on going with that one. And this last one, I did the same numbers, okay, and then adjusted down for the marketing budget. Said, okay, we'll just give the half of the incentivized, okay, marketing budget to them, and say this $4 million profit is what they made. They made $4 million. Okay? And yeah, that's trying to see the math in that, but I'm not sure where that is. I think the numbers are slightly off. Yeah, let me change. Man of Steel. Oh, pre-incentive budget. That's right. We moved to a pre-incentive budget, and that half of the marketing budget. That's what it made. So we're not to Man of Steel yet. Now we're into Man of Steel, and leaving it at the same figures. But then I added in there and said, well, what if it was reporting the thing the same way Superman, or Man of Steel rather, was reporting it then? Superman has to report it the same way. The production budget is it was 225 million without figuring in incentives back in 2013 because they weren't looking at that. They gave you the budget. They just said this is it, and then we're going to make a profit, or we're going to make some extra incentives from the tax man and stuff like that. And they likely figured it that way a lot of times because you can do a loss on the studio and discount other prices. You can write off things for taxes above and beyond. And if you were claiming a profit here, you would lose, that write off ability. If you said Superman lost us $4 million or $10 million, then they're writing something off. Okay, they're doing something to write that loss off as a business. Okay, and ultimately, when they get tax incentives and tax breaks and tax returns or tax rebates, they don't have to figure that kind of stuff in to accounting it as a loss in the first place. It's now just been subsidized. But that's my position on it. So back to the Superman 2025, before incentives are figured in, before any recalculation down to 225 million that they can do. I just flipped sheets a moment ago, so there we go. Production budget was $363,845,386. This is at most. Marketing budget was up to 200 million. It was reported as it could be as much as $200 million. Okay, I could change this down to 150 million so it was the same. We could go down to 125 million or 100 million if you wanted to. But look at the final number. Trying to figure out Man of Steel based on what they told us, and it comes up here to a loss of $8 million. Using the same, comparing apples to apples, pre-incentive budget to what the claimed budget is, at least by the report of one outlet, okay, and giving it the same one. Even if we gave it less, if we gave it $100 million, if I change this right now to $100 million, okay, Superman 2025 is losing at this figure $231,567,385. Take $1 million off the marketing budget. $131,567,385. No adjustments for inflation or anything like that. No need to do anything like that. Man of Steel, $8 million loss in 2013. If we change this to $50 million more, okay, $58 million. I'm sorry, 25 more. So that's $33 million. $33 million we just saw up there equated to about probably $46 million because I got a $47 million. $46 million versus $131 million. Okay, when we took this $1 million budget out, okay, $100 million rather out of that, $131 million versus $46 million loss. Okay, that doesn't come to the end of whether or not it's profitable or anything, because the movies following were definitely profitable. Okay, so it jump started the movies in the right direction, got people hyped in the right direction. The hype for Batman v Superman was off the charts in Hall H. People have seen that video of the preview where they just showed like Superman up there in the sky and or not even that. Just wait a minute. I think it is that. Yeah. Just the two of that momentary scene, and then change to the emblem of Superman and then the Batman symbol behind it. So Batman v Superman. And Hall H erupted, and they said, I couldn't watch this thing in the theater if that's the way the people were reacting. It's like it was a reaction in the theater. But it wasn't that. It wasn't. It was in Hall H, San Diego Comic-Con in 2014 or 15, one of those two. I can't remember. I think it's 14. And then, of course, the movie comes out in 2016. Now, I've got a lot I could say about the whole history of all of that. What happened? How that Man of Steel changed the game. Okay, changed the genre, the superhero genre, and it really did. The theories behind it, the philosophy that Zack Snyder had as saying we're not Marvel, and DC should not go the direction of Marvel. Not because we can't, but because DC Comics is a different type of comic than the Marvel comics. And Marvel's doing what it does, is doing it well. And DC should do what it does well in the DC Comics and follow that idea and I'm not giving his exact quote. I had to pull up a bunch of his interviews, and we just kind of watch these other interviews. Henry Cavill, uh, um, Zack Snyder, and more of the cast just have these amazing interviews, especially Zack Snyder and Henry Cavill. It's amazing going through their interviews. So you should watch that. But this is what I came to some understanding sort of about is something people weren't looking at. Why was the budget 363 million, 300 almost 364 million, and they said, "Oh no, it's only 225 million." Why? Why do they keep doing? Why do they keep now pressing it lower? Grok argues strongly and gives you numbers and tells you reasons why. And I see a little flaws and little discrepancies in his numbers, and he says, well, it could be accounted for by they just didn't spend as much as they thought they were going to do in the movie. I said, well, if they did that, and you take off $30 million from it, you're also going to lose, 10 to 20% of that in these things. And he also said also they could have gone for more aggressive rebates so you get higher percentage rebate as opposed to the lower end of the type of rebates that people get, and so forth. He had a lot of arguments. There's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of. It's like, okay, that could be true. That may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not gonna argue too much about things I don't fully understand. Um, and there was discussion about post shoots and all that stuff. Uh, just to throw more into it, the uh, tie-ins, which were valued um, at for Man of Steel at 150 to 170 million dollars, figuring in from the budgets of after incentives and so forth. Tie-ins, product tie-ins, and product placements and stuff like that, not necessarily cash value. He said there was offset of the production, an offset of marketing, and there was an offset that was considered cash. And those are the numbers that we have here. These are the same either way, and it's just figured into the budgets a little bit differently and some range of that. So low end to high end is kind of how I did it without doing too much for marketing budgets. So what does this offset in the cash and offset of the production, offset of marketing do? Effective costs and so forth. When the movie came out with $165 million, I think that was the estimated. Yeah, I believe that was the estimated amount. Reduced the low end of it to this 165 million. The high end toward 172.5 million. Maybe it's 180 point something other million. Another 12, $13 million. Okay, right? Then the theatrical profit with the tie-ins figured in, the cash and all that stuff for Man of Steel at the end of its run, $244,281,204. The higher end, not figuring in the incentives, the tax breaks, and all that, it's $169,281,204. Now, I will grant that I'm just a guy looking at numbers and trying to estimate and asking Grok to look up numbers and things like that too. But according to his ideas, the merchandise revenue and the sales of DVDs and stuff like that were these amounts, a total of almost $430 million, 428 million something. So if we add up profit for Man of Steel, um, pre-incentive, which was what was that? That was, I'm trying to figure out where we were with that one. I think that is this about $50 million profit idea. $50 million profit plus 428. It doesn't sound about right. This is 70 something million is what that is. 79 million. Okay, so 79 million. Okay, so that was up here. And I was looking at it in one way. There were so many numbers being thrown around that this is kind of what Grok came up with. And if you get the incentives in there, it's another 50 or $70 million, whatever it is. And I'm not sure about these numbers. These are all things I got to calculate again. But anyway, the guesstimate is close to $500 million of profits outside of the box office and shortly after the movie came out. So Man of Steel is profitable if you want to look at all those things. And I have yet to see some real numbers to follow up and show that anything like that for Superman. Superman has much lower sales on VOD, okay, and the physical domestic. I have been into Walmart and other places, any place I can see a Blu-ray on sale in my area, and they're not selling. They're just sitting there on the shelf. It's been essentially the same number of videos, and yeah, maybe they're refilling it, but everything around it is selling out, and it just sits there like it's not selling at all. Little end cap, it's just sitting there, not sold at all. The VOD has dropped again. It went on sale quickly and went on sale again, and some places you can find it for $10, but most places it was something a little higher than that. I forget what it was. But several weeks ago, it went down to $12, $11.99 on Fandango at home, uh, and that was kind of across all streaming platforms. And then just the other day, I looked at it again today. We'll show it to you. Fandango. Tell you what, it's Voodoo, okay? Voodoo.com, Fandango at home. And I shouldn't have to log in, but I will if I need to. And we're just going to look up Superman. Unless it changed today. Just continue, come on. Come on. Alright, Superman Season 1, 2, and 3. Then Superman, then the Superman Bundle, Superman 2, etc. Okay? Superman. $12.99. Been that for a few days at least, maybe a week. $12.99 download to buy. $7.99 to rent. Reduced again. What? Just out of curiosity, I'm just wondering what maybe this one would be. Man of Steel. Okay. Now, I'll be glad to look at each one of these, but let's go ahead with this one. Man of Steel, $14.99. $3.99 to rent. $14.99. You can watch it on HBO Max if you're doing that. Going to this. This is theatrical bundle. I'm not sure what that means. Not available. Fandango at home. Doesn't really matter because this is theatrical. So saying 4K. I'm not sure if they're trying to say they've upscaled it. But anyway, Man of Steel 3D not available, so you can't purchase that. That's okay. Now the Black Adam Man of Steel 2 film, you can buy that for $14.99. So same price as Man of Steel, you get Black Adam for free. Okay, if you're doing that, might as well. Um, Justice League, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, but this is not Zack Snyder's Justice League, for $24.99. So you get $10, you get the Batman v Superman, you get $14.99, and a free Justice League, which that's the price that Justice League should be, but it's $14.99. So that's Justice League, by the way. And going back and just checking one more time, the extended version was $12.99 or $3.99 to rent for the Ultimate Edition or extended cut of Batman v Superman. And I'm not saying that it's selling more. I'm just saying that that's the price that is on there. Okay. Uh, and we will click off of this and come back into our kind of world here. Okay. So the differences between the movies, and this is what Grok said. The split per week and the split per week for Superman. Okay, and they just gave a normal calculation. This could be completely wrong. It might be 90% in the first week. I don't know for sure, but he found 95 million as a reported number. So we said, okay, that makes sense, and then went from there and just reduced it as usual, I believe, to come up with this gross number, percentage of the international revenue per week. Okay, and this is the share that they get, the studio gets uh, per the week, and it's an average. I understand it's supposed to be in China. It's less. China didn't make a huge amount of the sales here. There was a larger amount of sales or tickets sold for China for Man of Steel than there was for Superman. And I'm not just talking about that number. It's $21 million, and it was at the lower price of 12 years ago, compared to, I think it was 8 million at tops that I saw reported for China, and it like came and went in China very fast. So, be that as it may, those are the numbers there. So, 146 million dollars overseas was the studio share, compared to $100 million studio share here. $232 million studio share for Superman 2025 domestically, and $195 million studio share there. So when you add those numbers up, it's $332 million, and on this side, it is 330. Okay, so it's about 200. It's about 340 million, 341 million. So there's approximately $9 million difference in the two when you look at studio shares, supposedly, according to this thing, and that's without adjusting for inflation. Then when we adjust for inflation, there's just no comparison. There's just no comparison, and we haven't even done the adjusting for inflation for doing a pre-incentive concern or consideration. We haven't done that. We haven't, and I say we again as people that are being logical and sensible about this and saying what's really going on. What are the numbers? Okay, and I appreciate one man that says that men lie and women lie, but numbers don't lie. But really, we are trying to figure this out the best we can. We are guesstimating a lot of it. We're putting this out there as okay. If it was this, then it's this. If we're correct, this is a theory. This is an idea that they did not tell us pre-incentive or post-incentive numbers before. They told us the gross total budget, and then uh, come along after that, and they do all their incentives on their own, and they get that number figured out for themselves. And DC, WBD, and James Gunn, they will not get away with unless people let them get away with it, with just saying, "Oh no, it's not 363 million. Where did you get that number?" Well, we got it from you filing a tax report, or at least your company filing a tax report, telling them this is how much we're spending. And I assume that the reason why is because you get a higher percentage if you're spending a certain amount of the gross at a particular location. And if you're spending more than that amount, maybe it drops down. They made a sweet spot of trying to figure out the highest amount they could do, and and then they go to try to spend that amount of money. Um, I just it is the way it is. Uh, and I don't mean that in the sense that some people are putting it. It just until and Grok made this comment that things are considered proprietary proprietary information. Therefore, they can't tell us exactly a budget. They can't tell us exactly how much is spent on marketing because it's a strategy that they have to do this. I don't know why they couldn't tell us just a number. Just come up with the actual number and say, listen, accounting office said this is your actual number. This is the actual number there. This is the actual rebate we got back from XYZ company. Okay? Or XYZ place. And there's ways that they figure it out that is proprietary information. Um, I don't see why that can't be done. That seems like an easy thing to do, and it would settle all this. But I can see why the studios wouldn't want to do that because I'm talking about it. You might be talking about it. Other people out there are talking about it because they don't tell us. They don't tell us an exact number, right? And they always try to promote it as if it's doing really good. It's doing so great. It's doing great. This is going to be the greatest movie of all time. This is going to be the greatest DC film since The Dark Knight. This is the new claim for Supergirl coming out next year. It's going to make more than the next Spider-Man movie. Supergirl is going to outgross or outperform Spider-Man. Brand New Day, right? Brand New Day is what it is. Maybe reasonably thought so. No, I don't reasonably think that it's going to make more. Could it do it? Sure, it could. Could be a surprise, but I doubt it. I don't think it's going to happen. And I would love for the people that love James Gunn's Superman, Superman 2025, to just they can look at Forbes article and just say, okay, fine, it lost some money. It made some money after that, and maybe it broke even later. Maybe it's a little bit profitable. We're apparently going to get a sequel. Maybe, you know, get to a lot of maybes. Be like maybe, whole lot of maybes. Because people that were fans, me included, of the vision and the movies that were going and the way things were going until Justice League was, destroyed by the studio. And believing when Zack Snyder's version of that film came out that we can see this every single time. Ultimate edition of Batman v Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, both of them superior by far to the theatrical release. I will defend that forever because that's the truth. All right. Uh, I happen to believe that there is out there somewhere a version of the Flash that Andy Muschietti, had. The story that came out recently was that that James Gunn changed the Flash, which I believe. There's a version of the Flash that Muschietti was trying to put out, however you pronounce his name, and he was trying to finish it and get done, and James Gunn interfered. Everything goes back to James Gunn interfering or the studio interfering before. The studio interfering before, then James Gunn interfering when he came on board. And I'll tell you, we'll go into the theories of that in a different video, but that's what's happened. And that reduction of the movie and change of the movie has produced movies, and also coming out and saying before the Flash came out, saying we're gonna run through these movies that have been on the books, but we're gonna get rid of and reboot, partial reboot, and, claim some people and leave some people behind. So I'll go into the theory about that another time. But fans said, well, why would we go spend good money, which we wanted to do? Black Adam was a version of that example where it's like, let's get it back from what was happening just prior to that, and the confusion that was going on. Again, I'll go into that in a theory video about the whole situation. Pull out all the movies and we'll look at everything. We'll just go through it all and go through some history. But yeah, interference caused this, and then saying this version is gone. We're not going to do any more Snyderverse movies. They kept saying that, and we kept saying that can't be because you're going to make money if you put out these proper cuts like the air cut. Release the air cut. If you put out these release the Muschietti cut. Release some other cuts. I'll go into these another time. But no, he said no. We're just going to end this thing. We're going to close it out. We'll keep Blue Beetle, and take that with us. He was already saying that before the movie came out, and I'm more for another video. But no, the rest of them are closing down. Aquaman 2 going to be the end of it all. We're done with it. We're going to cut out Ben Affleck's part in that. We're not going to show that. We're not going to give that storyline. We're going to have some reshoots and stuff like that to make it end up a certain way and so forth. And you see what they did. By the way, Aquaman 2, it came up there. Let me just real quick and kind of close on this. That Aquaman 2, right? Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, right here, line 16. Oh, let me show it to you. So yeah, line 16 there. Okay, and we're going to go over to profit or loss. Theoretically, the loss was 72 million. And you notice the loss of 169 million above that, 228 million, 178 million, 100 million. This was the lowest loss. It was even less of a loss than Justice League. Okay? The Lost Kingdom. And that was how bad it was. There's a different cut of the Lost Kingdom. There's a different cut. I guarantee it. That there's a director's cut, like a Zack Snyder cut, that you would have rather seen in the theaters. And ultimately, just you would have rather seen it for the DCEU. And would have closed it out a lot better. You could have closed these movies out better. And the reason why they didn't, I'm going to tell you the reason why they didn't. And I'm going to go. The reason why they didn't was because they had to make it crash in order to bring a new vision in. Because if you saw what they were really trying to do and the direction that it was going to go, when Black Adam came out, and then there we go, we got the jump start toward the right direction. The way it was going to go, if they'd have kept their hands out of it, Okay, and they had not said we're just going to cut it off and we're going to reboot it because we got to restart this thing, and we're going to change all these movies to make sure that they lose money. If they hadn't done that, you would have had a fandom saying these movies are going in the right direction now. They're doing well. This is right. This is what we want. This is the way we want it to go. Okay, you can go back and look at reactions to Henry Cavill being told not, coming out to finally say, okay, I've had my conversation and I'm not going to be Superman anymore. And just the vitriol of the decision from fans, anger at the new CEO, and the sadness of millions of fans that Superman was somehow going to change and we're not going to have our Superman, which we should have had for another 10 years. And now we've lost 3 or 4 years because of this. But, by the way, this changes a whole lot of stuff if this theory is correct. The reported budgets, if you go in and figure that in incentives and try to calculate that into all these budgets before they started already telling you that this is the thing because we get all these tax breaks. They weren't telling you that before. They never reported that before. They reported it as a full budget. So if you go back to the reported budgets and you say, well, let's calculate incentives into this, we have a drop of the budget, a drop therefore in theoretical marketing. Unless we get some real numbers, we can't do anything else. And we have an additional profitability. Up until maybe about 2013, 2022 to 2013. And if I'm remembering right, I won't just pull this over there, but Black Adam was in 2022. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, 2023. So get that time frame in your mind down, okay? And you can kind of start figuring it out from there. But I want to be done with it now. I don't want to talk about. Well, I'll go through the theory of at some point I'll be able to put together a video on the theories of um, the Zack Snyder universe, Snyderverse. Uh, what was happening, the hype about it. You know what was heard, things that you can go back and check and look at and try to find out. Um, that I don't really need to give you all of the evidence. It's something you can look up. Uh, but give it to you as I remember it and as I recall it. You're welcome to comment and show me some evidence that what I'm remembering is incorrect, and I would come out and I'd say I was very far off, or I was incorrect about this, that, and the other thing. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to get across right now, what I'm trying to say, uh, wouldn't be changed by that. But I want to put that kind of video up. But I want to be done with trying to compare it to Superman 2025. To me, there's no comparison to be made, really. But people need to stop coming out and trying to defend 2025's Superman as the greatest of all things and has blown out of the water the previous um, universe of movies. All right. And I just am amazed that keeps coming up. And I want to be done with it. I'd like to be done with it. And just talk from here about, a love for a type of movie or a series of movies or whatever. That will be in the future. I hope that you join me again if you put up with me for 2 straight videos here, about an hour long each, and looked at these numbers with me. Hopefully, you've been playing on double speed, so you only had to have an hour's worth of it. But that's how I see the numbers, and that's the theory that I have. And I believe that I'm not wrong about it. It would be better. It would be better if the studios would just come out and say, we can be honest and say, these are our bottom line numbers. We're not allowed to tell you exactly how we get to those things. This is how much we spent. This is how much came back in this factor, this factor, this factor. And this came back in this factor and this factor. This is how much we spent on marketing, bottom line. We can include a couple of little things that you saw, like a float at the Macy's Day Parade or something like that was this. Those kind of things. Just give us the numbers. Come out and just have your PR team do that. Maybe a year after the movie is done in the theaters and finished up, and you've got them finally. They've figured it out for tax purposes and everything. And what you're going to report for sure to the IRS, if is ultimately, what we'd like to be able to see. I understand you might not be able to break it down that far, but if you can, it'd make it a lot easier to avoid a lot of unnecessary infighting among fans. It's like a bottom line thing the studio has said, but not just the studio said. This is an official thing, okay? And if we're saying something here, and then the IRS sees something different on paper, they would come after you, and you'd be able to stop that. Again, no need for proprietary information. Anyway, whatever it is. No need for that. Don't need to know all the secrets and stuff like that. Just would like to know the numbers. You're giving us some numbers and some estimate. Give us a real number. Just give us, give it to us straight, And again, settle some of these issues. If you're now telling us something after tax breaks and before you were telling us something before tax breaks, then tell everybody, listen, we stopped telling you things the same way at this time. We're saying right now, this is after our tax breaks. And that was the claim. That was what was reported. But before, was not reported that way. We got the whole story, supposedly. Yeah, that was the idea, anyway. And I think it was a good idea. We could still have fun with this, and we could still argue about whether or not it was better than the other thing and everything else. And if you want that argument and the debates to keep on going, you can do that. But anyway, not that WB is watching me, but if you are, make it easier for us. Besides that, restore the Snyderverse, release the air cut, release the gun cut, release the machete cut, the Flash movie. Give us the director's cut of that. Give us the director's cut of Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Give us the director's cut of The Lost Kingdom, the Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Give us those director's cuts as well. Come on, I would love to see them all. And all of us fans want to. And you can't deny that you would make a lot of money on video and VOD at least with the air cut. Release the air cut, you're going to make a whole lot of money. Whatever you decide to do, we'll see what you're doing, and we'll make our judgments accordingly and decide how we want to spend our money. And we don't need to be, ridiculed into trying to watch something, because we probably won't watch those things that you try to make us feel bad that we have to watch it because we're racist if we don't and stuff like that. Nonsense. We're not racist. We're not homophobes. We're not any other kind of phobes that would cause any problem here. Put out content that we want to buy. And we want to buy something from DC that's not the same as what they put out for Marvel. All right. I'll buy the stuff from Marvel when they put out something good. I like the way they do things sometimes, but DC is a different type of comic book, therefore should be a different type of comic book movie, and it should stay that way. Characters are different also, so make the character according to what the character should be, and keep it right. Do things right. Do things right by the fans. We're the ones that are going to buy your product or not. Have a nice day, and God bless you if you've been here the entire time. Special blessings for you, I pray. and we'll see you again in the next video. Come back and see us. Bye.